A disaster for Spanish football, an historic blow for Spanish football, the biggest debacle in the history of Spanish football. These are just some of the headlines from the Spanish media after Atletico Madrid and Barcelona's disastrous exit from the Champions League group stages last week. This means that for the first time since the Champions League changed the 32-team format, there'll only actually be one Spanish team in the knockout stages. So this begs the question, is La Liga falling behind other European leagues? So just a quick recap of how Spanish teams actually did in the Champions League this year. As firstly we can see Atletico Madrid's disastrous 4th place finish, having gone out in goal difference to Bayer Leverkusen in their group. As for Sevilla, they finished 3rd behind Man City and Borussia Dortmund. They'll now play in the Europa League. Still a disappointing result. And of course another catastrophic 3rd place finish for Barcelona behind Bayern Munich and Inter Milan, which means they'll face a second season in the Europa League. Meanwhile, Real Madrid, flying the flag for Spain once again, finished top of their group with 13 points, but just 1 point above Red Bull Leipzig, who finished on 12. So when the competition resumes in February, there will be this strange sight of just one Spanish team, and as we mentioned in the intro, the Spanish press did not take this well. So let's take a look at some more reactions from them. A disaster that is only saved by Real Madrid. Disaster of the century for Spanish football. Only Madrid saves the pride of La Liga. The shipwreck of Spanish football. Now it's safe to say that the Spanish footballing world was in a state of shock following both of these clubs' exits from the Champions League at such an early stage. And the article we mentioned from El Mundo, one of the country's biggest newspapers, actually delves a bit deeper into underlying factors of what could have caused these teams to be playing so poorly, and also underlying fears of how the country's footballing system may actually be falling behind its European counterparts. For example, it talks about how Liga risks falling into 3rd position in UEFA's coefficient leagues, essentially its ranking system for the quality of European football. Now the 2nd position would be taken by the Bundesliga, and given any worse form, Italy's Serie A won't be too far behind either in 4th place. Now that actually might not sound that bad to start with, but you got to think about it from the pride aspect as well. Spanish fans are very proud of their league, and to drop down a table of how UEFA actually rank the quality of a league will be quite hard to take for some fans. And the article also mentions how the resurgence of Serie A clubs could have an impact on the Spanish league. Now let's think about this. In the Champions League this season in the group stages, 3 Italian teams have qualified for the knockout rounds, and Inter Milan were actually the team that Barcelona couldn't beat in their quest to qualify, and it was Inter Milan who took 2nd spot behind Bayern Munich in that group. Now that's a very interesting point, because Italian football, other than Juventus and European competitions, have been quite dormant for many years now. But if Atletico and Barcelona, say, are consistently not there, and Inter Milan are there and AC Milan are there, then surely players are going to want to go and play there instead. And El Mundo actually don't mince their words whatsoever when it comes to potential of La Liga dropping down to 4th position in terms of this UEFA coefficiency league, and they've called it a travesty, or it would be a travesty. Not messing around with their words whatsoever. So what are the main factors behind these fears of Spanish football falling behind its European counterparts? Well, of course, the big one is money. Money talks in the end of the day, and especially when you compare it, the Liga's fortunes to the Premier League's fortunes, there's a stark difference. So let's take a closer look at how these two leagues actually compare. So in the 2021-2022 season, the Premier League's revenue totaled $6.4 billion compared to the Liga's $3.6 billion. However, it's actually when we dive a bit deeper into these stats that things start to get really interesting. For example, let's take a look at how the television rights money creates a massive boost for Premier League teams. Each season, the Premier League dips into their £2.5 billion broadcasting pot and hand out an equal base payment to all its clubs. In the 2021-22 season, this averaged at about £84 million each. And the Premier League also pays a 2.2 million payment for every position that a club climbs in the table, literally meaning the higher you finish, the more money you get. So this means that even if a club gets relegated, they could still be walking away with £100 million worth of money. Now this is just in stark contrast to the money figures that we have in Spain that we'll take a closer look at now, but the difference is stark. Unlike the Premier League, La Liga only uses half of the money that it earns from the TV deals to spread an equal base payment to its 20 member clubs. This comes out at around €36 million, which is around £31 million. Liga does also have merit money payments for where its clubs finish in the table, which is taken from 25% of the TV broadcast rights money. Now the other 25% is distributed according to a team's capacity to generate revenue. Now for the purpose of this video, here's a quick look at how the earnings table for the La Liga season of 2020 to 2021 looked. As you can see, even Sevilla, who finished 4th place that season, would have ended up earning less money than a team relegated from the Premier League. And we've already seen this year how the Premier League's money advantage is already having an effect on the Liga. Now an interesting point to mention when we're talking about this is actually Alexander Isak's move from Real Sociedad to Newcastle earlier this year. Now it might not seem like it, but this is actually a really interesting move when we look at the dynamics between both leagues. Because if you think about it, Newcastle, who had their multi-billion pound investment at this stage, weren't seen as a top 4 challenger this season. Obviously they've started very well in the Premier League. Meanwhile, Sociedad, top 10 comfortably La Liga team, a Europa League campaign to look forward to this season, which they have been playing very well in. But Isak decided to move to Newcastle for a big money move. Take from that what you will, but for a player like him going to a club like Newcastle, who are of course investing in the future with a massive amount of money they've got, but it definitely shows that players' opinions on what league to play in might be changing. And of course, more recently, let's not forget Unai Emery's move from Villarreal. Of course, the Villarreal, which he won the Europa League with just a few seasons ago, got to a Champions League semi-final last year, and he's now moved to Aston Villa, who have started the season extremely poorly, albeit a massive club, but have started the season extremely poorly, and at the time of his appointment were only actually 1 point above the relegation zone in the Premier League. And it's also important to note that other Spanish clubs are doing well in other European competitions. Of course, they're not flying the flag like Real Madrid in the knockout stage of the Champions League, but clubs like Real Betis, who I'm wearing the shirt off here, Real Sociedad, have qualified into the knockout stages of the Europa League. But you know, in the grand scheme of things, it does appear that there's a lot to worry about for the Liga bosses and Spanish footballing fans as a whole. I suppose there's only so many times Real Madrid can actually carry the flag for Spain and pull off these miracles that we've seen in the last few seasons. After a while, it may actually catch up with them, and we may actually see a period where Spanish teams don't do well at all in Europe. But what do you think? Do you think that this could be the future for Spanish teams? Or do you think maybe this is just an off season and one just to forget for Spanish football? In the end of the day, this is football. You can't have it your way all the time. But if you've enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to the Partido. And always, nos vemos.